Here's what's coming up on Network Africa. Death toll from Liberia's tanker fire rises to 49. Reports from DR Congo's election observers flag irregularities that it says could undermine results. Plus, Russia reopens its embassy in Burkina Faso after 30 years. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Olarinde. The death toll from a tanker fire in Liberia has risen to 49, with the Ministry of Health saying that the death toll is expected to rise. Donations of medical supplies are being made to hospitals that are treating the injured people. Days ago, a fuel tanker crashed and exploded in the central region of the country after overturning a longer road in Toto town, about 130 kilometers from the capital Monrovia, bursting into flames soon after people rushed to the site to scoop fuel from the tanker. Over 83 people were admitted in hospital for their injuries following the disaster, and Liberia's President George Weah has expressed his condolences to the families of victims. Well, joining us now is Strachan Repu, the news editor at OK Radio based in Monrovia. Thank you so much for your time on the program. What more details can you give us about this unfortunate incident that led to several deaths?
Well, like you rightly put it, over 40 persons have died, and health authorities have reported that already. So the Ministry of Health of Liberia is expected to have a news conference on today to update the public about, where we are as a people. So His Excellency, the President of Liberia, George Weah, has expressed condolence and said that the health authorities have his backing the beef of men, the strength of manpower, so that, most of these people can, who are injured, can also get the needed medication. But as it stands right now, several health facilities across the country, people have been transported there. The health minister, an authority of the health ministry told me on yesterday that over 80 persons are at various health centers, and the death toll continue to increase, as it relates to the tanker disaster in Totota Bon County, the central region of Liberia.
But how are families, families of victims holding up at this time?
Well, it's a sad moment. Tragic and sad for them and for our nation. On Tuesday, on Wednesday, there was a mass burial of some of the people who died instantly as a result of the fire incident. Some were dismembered because we know what the flame does. When the fire is too heavy. So there was a mass burial. Family and friends were standing around. Weeping in total confusion, and the government has not said anything yet as it relates to compensation for these people. 8 institutions are coming in, including the Red Cross, to assist them. But it's a total state of confusion for the families and some of those who have, victims who are survivors. At various hospitals, they are there and consoling their relatives and loved ones. But they are in total state of confusion, and the entire nation is also in total state of confusion because of what has happened.
Indeed, it's a sad and tragic one. But away from the explosion now to politics, we know Liberia has just had its election, and incumbent President George Weah would not be returning. When should we be, expecting the inauguration?
So, according to the Liberian Constitution, the third working Monday in January of, the ensuing election year, is the inauguration. So, the first, January, the first Monday in this January in 2024 will not be a working Monday. So, going by the constitutional provision and mandate, the third working Monday, in the month will be on the 22nd of January. So Joseph Boakai, the president-elect, former vice president, to Her Excellency, former President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, Boakai will be inaugurated on the 22nd of January this year. That which time Mr. Weah will be handing power over to Mr. Boakai. And that follows, nearly 75 years since Liberia, experienced that. Our first peaceful transfer of power from one democratically elected leader to the other was done in 2018 when Mr. Weah took office. Liberia will be experiencing the second anticipated peaceful transfer of power on the 22nd of January 2024.
And how would, President Weah's administration be remembered in the country? And also, what are Liberians looking to get from new President Joseph Boakai?
Great question. Mr. Weah is popular amongst the young people of the country, the young generation, the young population of the country. There where Mr. Weah is really popular. Thus, Weah, as a president, had managed to, build a lot of recreational centers across the country. He's credited for the 14 military hospital. He's also credited for the Emory Hospital in the western region of the country. He also managed to build some roads, and there are other roads under construction. And the bigger portion of all is the Roberts International Airport, the country's only international airport's road that lead to Monrovia. So those are things Mr. Weah will be remembered for. On the other hand, as the new government is about to come to power, the biggest discussion in the country is about accountability because there are thoughts and beliefs that the Weah government was corrupt, evidenced by sanctions being imposed on the other 10 persons in the regime within 6 years. So as we speak, a lot of Liberians are looking up to the new regime and calling on Mr. Joseph Boakai to institute a sweeping audit that will ensure accountability. And Mr. Boakai himself has told the Voice of America that his regime is committed to ensuring accountability in public office and that he will go ahead to audit the regime.
All right, then, Chokun Repu, news editor at OK Radio in Monrovia. Thank you so much for your time on the program.
It's a pleasure joining you. Thanks so much.
We'll move on to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where the main observer mission has reported numerous irregularities relating to last week's presidential and legislative elections. And the observer mission says this could undermine some results. The Independent Joint Vote Monitoring Mission of Congo's Catholic Church and its Protestant Church said it had received 5,402 reports of incidents at polling stations, over 60% of which are interrupted voting. The Senko ECC mission, made of thousands of observers, documented numerous irregularities likely to affect the integrity of the results. In particular, it questioned the legality of the Seni Election Commission's decision to extend some voting beyond December 20th and reported that voting was not wrapped up fully until December 27. Provisional results issued so far from the election show incumbent President Felix Tshisekedi with a commanding lead, but his opponents have demanded they be annulled. Sudan's Rapid Support Forces RSF leader Mohamed Dagalo has visited Addis Ababa, Ethiopia to discuss the situation in Sudan with top officials. Mr. Dagalo met with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, Deputy Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister Demeke Mekonnen, seeking a solution for the armed conflict in his country. The two sides discussed the latest developments in the armed conflict and ceasefire negotiations. Prime Minister Abiy says he had consulted with Dagalo on the importance and effective ways to ensure peace and stability in Sudan. Well, before visiting Ethiopia, Dagalo had also visited Uganda and held talks with Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni on the armed conflict in his country. Russia has reopened its embassy in Burkina Faso after it was shut more than 30 years ago. Well, this is fulfilling Russian President Vladimir Putin's announcement back in July of plans to reopen the embassy during the Russia-Africa Summit in St. Petersburg. The embassy was reopened at a ceremony in Burkina Faso's capital, Ouagadougou. Burkina Faso was a close ally of former colonial power France, but has pivoted towards Russia since the military seized power in a coup in 2022. The embassy was closed in 1992 as Moscow tried to reduce its involvement in Africa following the end of the Cold War and the collapse of the Soviet Union. However, Russia has not named the head of mission, but Russia's ambassador to Cote d'Ivoire, Alexei Saltkov, says he's expected to head the mission until President Putin makes an appointment. In Chad now, the Supreme Court has validated the results of the referendum for a new constitution organized by the military junta that has been in power for the past 2.5 years. Well, this is seen as a key step intended to pave the way for elections in the country at the end of 2024. According to the final results read out by the President of the Supreme Court at a press conference, those in favor of the referendum won with 85.90%, with a voter turnout of 62.8%. However, some members of the opposition and civil society say the result of the ballot resembles a vote designed to pave the way for the election of the transitional president, General Mahamat Idris Deby Itno. The Supreme Court also rejected an appeal by the Bloc Federal, an opposition coalition which had called for the results to be annulled on the grounds of several irregularities in the voting process. It appears South Africa is facing a critical need for a 1 trillion rand investment to address the deterioration of its water infrastructure and also facilitate necessary upgrades essential for meeting the escalating demands of the nation's population. Well, Minister of Water and Sanitation Senzo Mchunu recently initiated the Water Shifting Program in response to the escalating crisis. Meanwhile, political analyst Dr. Nsikelelo Breakfast attributes the surge in unsafe drinking water to institutional failures.
I think partly is because of the appointment of wrong people in certain strategic places. Because if you are dealing with issues of water, you need to appoint professionals who can plan. Because you are speaking about infrastructure that is falling apart. So then the question is, why is that particular infrastructure falling apart? It is partly because of shortage of engineers, shortage of good professional managers who can do the planning. Not only responding when the problem arises, but people who can intercept, threats before they break out. So, the issue of scarcity of water does not only affect communities, but also it affects our economy. Who wants to do business in a country, in an area that doesn't have water? Nobody. So it's not only, ordinary citizens who are on the back foot, but even our economy is being affected. I just think that, maybe it's high time for people to think carefully when they vote.
Well, tributes are being paid to the South African playwright Mbogeni Ngema after he died in a car crash aged 68. He rose to international prominence in the 1980s with plays that depicted the lives of black people under the racist system of apartheid. President Cyril Ramaphosa led tributes to the playwright, composer and theatrical director. The South African leader said Ngema's masterfully creative narration of the liberation struggle honored the humanity of oppressed South Africans and also exposed the inhumanity of the apartheid regime. South African actress Sophie Ndaba also said Ngema would be remembered for generations to come, thanking him for his creative work and music in her tribute posted on Instagram. He died in a head-on collision on Wednesday evening while returning from a funeral in the town of Lusikisiki in the Eastern Cape province. Still ahead on Network Africa. It's the end of the year and we're looking at stories and happenings that shaped the year 2023 on the African continent. Please join us again. Welcome back to the program. Ghanaian journalist Afua Asantewa has exceeded the Guinness World Record for the longest singing marathon by an individual. The broadcast journalist and mother of three had been performing hundreds of Ghanaian songs back to back since midnight on Sunday, December 24. On Thursday, December 27, 2023, she exceeded the record held by Sunil Wagmare, an Indian who sang for 105 hours in March 2012. Afua has now concluded the marathon on Friday, December 29 at midnight, accumulating 126 hours of continuous singing. She sang for 126 hours and 52 minutes, surpassing Wagmare's mark by an additional 21 hours. Or the 17th edition of the African biggest street party carnival Calabar with the theme Season of Sweetness has taken place in Calabar, the Cross River capital here in Nigeria. According to Governor Bassi Otu, who spoke after flagging off the 2023 edition, the whole essence of the theme is to restore the state's lost glory as the preferred tourism destination of Africa.
28th of December every year is the day set aside by the government of Cross River State for Africa's biggest street party, christened Carnival Calabar. The colorful event attracts people from far and near to Calabar to participate and share beautiful memories with family and friends.
With the harmonization of tourism and industrialization, here they come. The next section, dressed on the front stage of the category. If you know what you see, make some noise! Come on!
This year's carnival is hosting about 18 different states with the theme Season of Sweetness, which the governor of Cross River State, Bassi Otu, says is to bring sweetness to the people after experiencing so much hardships in the past.
Well, we passed through some very difficult periods, and after every dark cloud comes a light, and I believe that this is a season of sweetness. The future is even going to be bigger, because this one we started a bit late, but by the time we now start this one as we end this particular one, then you know what we are going to expect. You know, Cross River State remains the tourism destination as far as this country is concerned, and we will continue to keep the flag flying.
The Minister of Sports Development, Senator John Owaneno, and his counterparts from the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Dr. Betta Edu, are part of those who graced the event. They share their thoughts on the colorful event.
I cannot be more proud, to be a Cross Riverian at this point. I mean, you can see excitement in the air. You can see the crowds. You can see that Calabar Carnival is back. It's better, it's bigger, it's sweeter to correspond with the team. This is not sweetness. I mean, this is leadership at its best. And I think that yesterday the governor rallied his troops, all of us together in the clarion call to set Cross River. And we are ready and we are available. And that's why I see all of us here on the front.
This remains the biggest street party in the world, with millions of people on the streets, and we have our street governor and his wife on the streets too. And what we're saying is, let peace reign, let humanity continue to thrive, and let us love one another.
Next, different dance groups use the occasion to thrill the audience. The event, which provides thousands of entertainment lovers with some fun for hours, promises to be even bigger and better next year.
The year 2023 came with numerous challenges for the continent, from natural disasters to military takeovers. Our next report is on some of the stories and happenings that shaped the year in Africa.
Floodings and landslides triggered by heavy rains killed at least 129 people in Rwanda. Floods also hit the Democratic Republic of Congo, where hundreds of people were killed in one of the country's deadliest disasters. Morocco was dealt a 6.8 magnitude earthquake in the high Atlas Mountains. Over 2,900 people dead in the country's deadliest earthquake since 1960. Days after, Storm Daniel and a collapsed dam swept floods through eastern Libya, destroying large parts of the eastern coastal city of Derna. The UN confirmed more than 4,000 people died. Two military coups rocked the African continent this year in the West African region. Soldiers took over power from Niger's President Mohamed Bazoum in the capital Niamey as regional leaders, ECOWAS, locked horns with the new leadership, announcing it could employ the use of force in removing the junta. On the second to the last day of August, military officers in Gabon seized power, putting President Ali Bongo under house arrest, minutes after the Central African States election body announced he had won a third term in office. The month of April saw violence return to the Sudanese capital Khartoum as the country's armed forces and a paramilitary group clashed in a struggle for power. The fighting has now raged on for over 7 months.
And as the year rolls on to the end, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for building trust and hope in 2024 in his New Year's Eve message. In a short speech pre-recorded at the UN headquarters in New York, Mr. Guterres referenced violence, war, climate change, poverty, and economic suffering. He's urging the world to work together to find solutions in the new year.
It has been a year of enormous suffering, violence, and climate chaos. Humanity is in pain. Our planet is in peril. 2023 is the hottest year on record. People are getting crushed by growing poverty and hunger. Wars are growing in number and ferocity, and trust is in short supply. But pointing fingers and pointing guns lead nowhere. Humanity is strongest when we stand together. 2024 must be a year for rebuilding trust and restoring hope. We must come together across divides for shared solutions, for climate action, for economic opportunity and a fairer global financial system that delivers for all. Together we must stand up against the discrimination and hatred that are poisoning relations between countries and communities. And we must make sure new technologies, such as artificial intelligence, are a force for good. The United Nations will keep rallying the world for peace, sustainable development, and human rights. Let us resolve to make 2024 a year of building trust and hope in all that we can accomplish together. I wish you a happy and peaceful new year.
And that's it on the last edition of Network Africa for the year. Thank you so much for always being a part of it. I'm Layo Olarinde. Have a lovely new year.